Hey, everybody, this is Trags, and I am back for episode 27 of the Jungle Roar podcast. We are still in the season number one. That is because the Bengals were able to knock off the Las Vegas Raiders on Saturday night in dramatic fashion. 26-19, of course. You all know the story by now, the end of the 31-year, 9-day playoff win drought. That's in the past. I am welcoming in this episode 27 one of the best on the beat, and that is Jay Morrison of The Athletic, covering all things Bengals and the NFL for The Athletic. Please follow Jay on Twitter at JMorrisonATH, all one word. How you doing, Jay?
Great, Trags. How are you? I feel like I should be asking you the questions. Like, how do you cover a team that advances in the playoffs? I've never done it before.
Well, I think I said this on the Zoom call, maybe on Sunday, whenever it was, that the last time I covered a team that did not make the NFL playoffs was 2008, the year Brady tore his ACL, and still that Patriot team won 11 games. The last time I covered an NFL team that did not win double digits in the regular season was, do you know when? Last time I covered
probably the last when you covered the Bengals before you went to New England, right?
No, it was close, but it was 2002 when after their first Super Bowl win, the Patriots went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. That's the last time I covered a team that did not win double digits. It's just amazing. So I deserve all the credit for the Bengals advancing in the playoffs. So the Bengals have another box to check this weekend, as I wrote and as I tweeted out on Tuesday, and that is winning a playoff game on the road for the first time in franchise history. They are 0-7 and 0-9 away from Cincinnati, as we all know what the other two neutral site games were, Super Bowls 16 and 23. Winning a game on the road, I think, in terms of the three remaining higher seeds than the Bengals are in the AFC, I think this is the most desirable opponent. Not only have they beaten the Titans last year in 2020, that was at Paul Brown Stadium, I think they match up reasonably well. I think if they can handle the run game.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree. You always wonder or worry about a slow start in a road game. And we saw it. They were at home against the Chiefs and they started slow and they got behind 14-0. If something like that happens in Buffalo or in Kansas City, I don't think you're coming back and winning that game, but it wouldn't be ideal to get behind like that at Tennessee, but I feel like that is a situation that the Bengals could manage. And even if you're not talking about playing from behind, just one of the Bengals' strengths on defense is stopping the run, and they haven't faced the quality of a run game
that's
outside of maybe Cleveland. Cleveland's pretty good, but they didn't fare very well against the Browns either. So this is a little bit of a different animal, but it feels like you look at just the quarter, but beyond the matchup of run offense versus run defense, you just look at the head-to-head quarterback matchup, and I think a lot of people would say, yes, give me Joe Burrow over Ryan Tannehill, even though Ryan Tannehill has been doing this longer, has seen more, has more playoff experience.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look at how the Titans are built, and I'm writing about this for CLNS Media, Jay, the Titans are built in the trenches, and that shouldn't surprise anybody, given the fact that their head coach is Mike Vrabel.
And I mean, you look at that, a lot of those guys they got in free agency. Then they also have some high draft picks on that O-line. Lawan was a first round pick. They've intentionally stockpiled those positions, and whereas the Bengals have kind of been more of the mindset of we'll hope for the best on the offensive line and hope we can overcome whatever deficiencies there are there. Now they have defensive line. Yes, they paid a great deal of attention signing Hendrickson, Ogunjobi, Reeder, drafting Sam Hubbard with a high pick. That side's been a little bit different, but I mean, it's not an accident, and it's not all Derrick Henry why that offensive, or why that run game is so good offensively. They have really invested in their O-line.
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting point, Jay, is how will Lou Anarumo decide to attack that offensive line? Will he bring more guys into the box? Will he do more stunning across the defensive line? I think that's a fascinating matchup to watch. And I also believe this, and we'll see if it bears out, but whether or not the Bengals can handle the loss of Larry Ogunjobi to injured reserve with a foot injury. I think if there's one team left in the playoffs that can really handle that, it's the Bengals, because that BJ Hill for Billy Price trade in the preseason, last week of preseason, is looking really good right about now.
Honestly, it's looked good all year, and that's not a slight on Billy. I think Billy has played better with the Giants than he did with the Bengals, but BJ Hill has been terrific this year. I mean, 5.5 sacks. You look at between him and Ogunjobi, you've got 12.5 sacks from your defensive tackles. It's I agree that it's a big loss losing Larry Ogunjobi, but it feels like they can mitigate that a little bit. You can move a Cam Sample inside and get some pass rush snaps out of him. It looks like Trey Hendrickson will be back. He was at practice today. It looks like Josh Tupou might be back. He was at practice today. So 24 hours ago, it was a big, huge concern, but it's already trending better. And that's one of the reasons that you invest in a position group like that in the trenches, is in case things go wrong. They've been very fortunate all year, every position group, of not having injuries, and now they all hit at once, and you at least have people you can lean on to stick in there. It's not ideal facing an offense like the Titans, but Paul Daner, who I do the podcast with on The Athletic, asked me this morning, where my concern level is, from 1, not at all, to holy crap, this is terrible at the top end. And I said, 3 or 4, and that's before we knew Hendrickson and Tupou were back at practice. So I do think that it's not a dire situation. It's not ideal, but I think they can overcome it.
Well, not only overcome it, Jay, but I actually think the Bengals and Anarumo might be able to, and Marion Hobby. I mean, we haven't spoken enough this year collectively, I think, as a group, about the job Marion Hobby has done along the defensive line, coaching them up. But I think we could see maybe the reverse of the NASCAR front. I mean, that's the front that the Giants made famous with, putting all pass rushers along the defensive line. Do you think we could see something along that where Lou and Marion say, we're just going to put heavier bodies along the front and make it harder for them to move us out of the way? Maybe 3 nose tackles. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know how much faith they have in Tyler Shelvin. I think and we heard DJ Reader talk about it today, how he got on Tyler early, and he said everybody got on Tyler early. And I think there's that is not coming along as well as they hoped when they drafted him in the 4th round. But that Cleveland game, we all talked about how important it was to rest the starters. The other side of that is getting guys like Tyler Shelvin snaps and getting his feet wet against NFL competition, and knowing one way or the other, can we trust him in a playoff game? So that will be interesting to see. He's going to be active. He hasn't been active on game days most weeks. I think he will be active, and maybe they do that. Maybe they put Reader and BJ Hill and Tyler Shelvin in the middle of that line, and kind of dare the Titans to attack it that way. The thing that we focus so much on their running game and Derrick Henry, and I feel almost like people are sleeping on Ryan Tannehill and AJ Brown and don't
Julio.
forget, they've got a guy over there named Julio Jones, who does not look like the Julio of old, but you get in a playoff game and get a guy with experience like that, and you see him turn up a little bit. So it's not the juggernaut that the Chiefs or the Bills are, but it is a formidable offense for sure.
It is. And the thing that concerned me the other day about the Raider game wasn't necessarily the Raiders being able to move the ball with Darren Waller and Derek Carr throwing passes to Darren Waller. It was the size of the holes that Josh Jacobs was running through, and that he did not run through the first time against the Bengals. I just thought that there was too many gaps on the edges of the defensive line and on the edge of the Raider offensive line. That gave me a little bit of a pause. And, everybody remembers Mike Hilton chasing down Josh Jacobs from behind. It was, a terrific tackle and saved 4 points at that. I believe that saved 4 points. And, you don't want to see that happening here against Tennessee.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that was kind of the approach they took against the Chiefs, where they were like, we're not going to let Kelsey, we're not going to let Hill, and you have to bend somewhere, and maybe it was so focused on Renfro and Waller that you leave some gaps there in the run game, and Jacobs was able to exploit it. I don't think I don't think the run game is going to be a secondary thought this week, but then that leaves it open the other way to, are the Titans going to be able to expose the middle of the field with the tight end? Or are they going to be able to hit AJ Brown down the field for deep shots? There's no way that you're going to be in a game against a playoff team, or in a playoff game against a good team, and be able to just totally shut them down. You got to kind of pick where you want to focus. But I wouldn't worry so much about what Jacobs did, just because I think that will be the intent of this Lou Anarumo game plan, is let's stop Derrick Henry, and if Ryan Tannehill beats us, then so be it.
All right, we've spent enough time, I think, for the time being, talking about the defensive front and how they're going to handle Derrick Henry. Now, we're assuming Henry missed the last 9 regular season games with a foot injury. We are assuming that Henry is going to come back and play on Saturday against the Bengals, 4:30 kickoff down at Nissan Stadium. If he doesn't, or if he is limited in any capacity, D'Onta Foreman certainly had a terrific year for the Titans. He is the other running back we certainly should mention. But now we're going to move on to the Bengals and the offensive side of the ball. And the job Joe Burrow did in his first playoff game: 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Here's the theory I have for you, Jay Morrison of The Athletic, covering the Bengals in the NFL. I think that the Bengals were more conservative in that second half because they were playing with a lead for the most part, either 14 or 10 points for a better part of that second half. Yes, it got down to 7, and yes, it was, nut crunching time, as a lot of coaches like to say, toward the end of that game. But I think Joe Burrow managed that game with the lead very, very well.
Yeah, I do too. And it's funny because being conservative where the Bengals are concerned still feels like you can attack. Like, just because you're running the ball doesn't mean you're just killing the clock and managing the lead. Joe Mixon is one of the best running backs in this league. And I think you can kind of have your cake and eat it too there, where you be a little more conservative and run some clock, but still not be in the mode of, okay, we're just going to run it and then punt. And if you remember, when they got down in the red zone, they weren't able to capitalize, but it wasn't like that San Francisco game where Zach just kind of ran the ball and then was more conservative, and then Joe gets sacked on third down. The only time we saw that was actually early in the game, after the strip sack, and they had it at, I can't remember, it was inside the red zone, it was close to the 10, and that was the only time they ran Mixon on the first 2 plays, and then the pass on third down didn't work and they kicked the field goal. So I do think it wasn't just red zone, it was overall that once they did have the lead, that's kind of the responsible thing to do. And even though you trust Joe Burrow not to make mistakes, he is in his second year, in his first playoff game. And it felt, everybody knows how these games are, one tipped pass, a perfect pass from Joe Burrow that maybe goes off a receiver's hands and gets intercepted can totally swing one of those games. And it was Zach's first playoff game too. So I wasn't surprised to see them take a little more conservative approach, knowing they were playing from ahead.
And knowing that Zach Taylor said on Sunday after the game that he could have done a better job in the red area. Mm-hmm. What do you think that really means? Pass the ball more, call different plays. When he says I can do a better job in the red zone, what does he mean?
I think he meant play selection, not run versus pass, but pass versus pass, calling this pass instead of that pass.
Right.
or this concept versus that concept. I that was the impression I got, that he wasn't happy with his play selection in terms of the routes that he called, and in putting Joe in the best position. Like I said, I don't remember them running all that much in the red zone except for that first time after that turnover early in the game.
I think all year, and I correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, I just don't ever get the sense that they run particularly well in the low red area. I just don't. Maybe it's just that the fact that they don't have the offensive line that they feel confident in doing that, like maybe a Tennessee does. Certainly, they definitely feel confident running the ball low red area. I just don't get the sense that the Bengals do, and they leave it in the hands of their best player, Joe Burrow, down there.
Yeah, because I mean, they run more power down in the red zone, and you're right, they don't have the line for that. You're not running that as much of the zone and relying on Joe to do the cutbacks. That's not the kind of attack you want to have in the low red zone. It's straight ahead, and they're just not getting the push. The holes are not there for Joe Mixon.
I mean, the best example of that, of course, was the end of the Kansas City game where they got lucky and, they had the hands to the face call on Tyler Boyd, and they got another shot. And when they got that shot, they ran out the clock and kicked the field goal. Field goals to me, this is the kind of game that's kind of weird to me, because I don't know if you need to score a ton of points to beat Tennessee, but I do think if you get in a low red zone against Tennessee, you've got to punch the ball in. You take your field goals, between 30 and 50 yards, even a little bit beyond 50, outdoor stadium. I trust Evan McPherson in these situations. But I just think they've got to find a way to be better offensively in the red area. Your thoughts on Jamar Chase? I was impressed with, he had the drop on the first target of the game, and clearly he put that in the past. That's the thing about Jamar Chase that impresses me the most. Certainly his numbers are all pro. He has had an incredible Randy Moss-esque rookie season with the Bengals, but his ability to put bad plays behind him and his composure really impresses me as a first-year NFL player.
Yeah, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, maybe that offseason full of drops helped him. He learned to trust his ability and not get in his own head, and trust his talent, and that, put that stuff behind you, move on to the next one. And that could very well have kind of laid the groundwork for that, because we have seen him. The Jets game, he dropped a touchdown pass, and he comes back strong after that. And it's just, it's something that a young receiver has to learn. Yeah, I was struck. Deontay Johnson for the Steelers had a couple brutal drops in that Chiefs playoff game, and in his post-game press conference, he said, "Look, I'm going to drop the ball. I'm human. That happens. You just move on from it and make the next play." And I think Chase has that same mindset, even though he hasn't dealt with this before. He never dropped the ball at LSU, and then he has that I don't know what you want to call it, blip or whatever it was in the OTAs in the preseason, and it had to have bothered him. And you could just tell some of the easier ones that they threw to him, he dropped, and clearly that is a mental thing, and he got over it. And so, yeah, that you never want to see a drop, but if you do see one early in this game or the next, whenever it is, I don't think anybody has to be worried about, this is going to be a thing today. He's proven over and over again that he can move on to that next play, and not just move on, but excel.
You asked Joe Burrow, and I'm paraphrasing here, Jay, so please do correct me if I'm wrong. I'm paraphrasing you. On Tuesday during the Zoom call with Joe Burrow, you asked whether or not confidence and rhythm can carry over from one drive to another. Is that about right? Is that what you asked Joe? Am I?
Yeah, because my thought process was there. It's one thing if, and we've seen him do this, get hot in the second half, and it coincides with the defense getting stops, and you getting three and outs, and then you go right back out there. And so that rhythm can kind of just keep going. But what happens if you have a nice long drive and it feels like you're in a rhythm, and then the Bengals defense lets Derrick Henry go 75 yards in 9 plays? Does it feel like you're starting over again? And he said that can be a challenge. And number one, mentally, to kind of keep the rhythm going. And number two, he said if it is a long drive, he'll get up. He'll get up off the bench, and he'll start making throws and getting loose. And he's been on such a heater lately where it seems like he's been unstoppable in the second halves of these games and on such a great run. And part of that, it has been because the defense has turned it up too, and either gotten three and outs or turnovers, and you give it right back to the offense. And it's like that momentum just starts gaining speed, and they become unstoppable. And that was just kind of what I was curious with him, is if he thinks they can do that, if the defense isn't holding up its end of the big deal.
So the reason I think that's interesting you brought that up, and it was a critical part of the game, was early fourth quarter. The Raiders capped a 13-play, 57-yard drive. 7.5 minutes, the ball was out of Joe Burrow's hands. And he did not look particularly sharp in that fourth quarter. The Bengals did score, obviously, a key field goal. They, turned out to be a very, very important possession because they made it a two possession game at 26-16 on that 4th and inches. I can tell you that I was nervous that they were going to go 4th and inches. And if Joe Burrow got the right look, they were going to snap the ball and go for it. And that would have been a very, very big risk. No, don't you think?
It would have been a huge risk. And I think Zach even said that, yes, they would have, didn't he? That if
yeah,
they got
he
the
did.
right look,
and
they would have gone for it.
And I'm like, you really would have gone for that when a 2-possession game is really what you're looking for at that point? It surprised me. But I bring up that Daniel Carlson 34-yard field goal early fourth quarter as kind of some, evidence to support why you were asking Joe Burrow that question, and why maybe Joe Burrow had some trouble finding his rhythm in the second half of that game on Saturday. I think it's going to be a different story. This is a Tennessee team, having preliminarily looked at the numbers for this game. They can be passed upon, and they are just above the Bengals in pass defense in terms of yardage allowed. I think the Titans come in 25th in the NFL. The Bengals are 26th. You can pass on the Titans. And if the Bengals are allowed and Burrow is allowed enough time, I look for some big strikes down the field, and I look for a big game from T. Higgins, because Vrabel is going to double Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and it feels like it's T's turn.
Yeah, it does.
Uzomah got his
right.
turn, and Tyler Boyd had his, and and T didn't look particularly good in that Raiders game. There was one point where I just happened to be looking down, and I saw him walk off the field and slam his helmet down with both hands. He had dropped a couple passes he typically doesn't drop. There was a couple where he and Joe just couldn't quite get on the same page, and the frustration was apparent. And it's kind of like Jamar bouncing back from the drops. You expect T to bounce back from a not T. Higgins like game and have a big one, because you're right. It's almost malpractice now at this point if you don't double Jamar Chase. It's like, I don't care how good of a corner you think you have to double that guy. And thought Vrabel had a good comment today where they asked him about Jamar Chase's relationship with Kristen Fulton. They both went to same high school, both went to LSU, and if that familiarity could help. And he said, yeah, and that's about all I've got. Because there's not much else to rely on there, except you have to double that guy if you want to take him away.
How much did you enjoy what Zach Taylor did after the game the other night?
I thought it was really cool.
I did.
I was a little. The one thing that struck me was they should always post that video of him giving the game balls out in the post game locker room, and it's raucous. And everybody's like, yeah, really into it. And when he said he was giving one to Mike Brown, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, a little smattering of applause. I thought it would be bigger for some reason. And then the gesture to give it to I thought was brilliant. It wasn't spur of the moment. He said it's something he's thought about since he got here, driving past that same Mount Lookout Tavern every night that he goes home from work, and always seeing Bengal fans in there and appreciating the fact that they're supporting them even though they were losing. And I thought it was a really, really cool gesture. And it was funny. If you watch we watched the news after the Chiefs Steelers playoff game, and they were interviewing the people from Mount Lookout Tavern, and they were talking about how Zach was in there giving everybody high fives and everything, and he kind of downplayed that, kind of contradicted everything he said. He said he was in and out quickly, and because he was asked about COVID concerns and
Right, and protocols
like that,
right.
and yeah, but it was I thought it was really cool. I think that, you know, that this is a team that is not long on traditions. It took them forever to put in a Ring of Honor, and now this year they've created the Ruler of the Jungle, and some people think it's hokey, but other people think it's cool. I think anytime you can establish something like that not only the fans can appreciate but participate in, it's huge.
So and I shouldn't throw you into this group, but I'm going to generalize here, Jay. We in the media are sometimes way too cynical. And we know that when, you know, let's say Zach is talking about we need fans to show up this week like he did several times during the regular season. We need fans to fill the jungle. We need fans to fill PBS. You know, he's another marketing arm of the Bengals' need to sell tickets, and that's understandable. But this has gone beyond that. And I think the Bengals deserve very high marks, starting with Elizabeth Blackburn, who, you know, had the kind of the brainchild of coming up with the Rule the Jungle concept before the season began. You know, and they had to iron some things out, as any new concept does. You have to go through the ups and the downs, what works, what doesn't work in terms of reaching the fan base. But my general rambling point here is that the Bengals, I think, have done a sincerely genuine and very good job of re-engaging the fan base. And obviously, the number one thing you have to do is win, and you have to win in the playoffs. And that's why I thought Saturday night was so important, because you could feel a different energy around the fan base with the Bengals winning, and with a guy like Zach Taylor going out to MLT and getting the crowd riled up and saying thank you to the fan. Because he's not just saying thank you to the fans in that bar at that night. He's saying thank you to everybody who has stuck through all of this crap, and the ownership, which he said, if, you know, it was any other team, I don't know if I'd be here for a third season. I thought that was also really poignant.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought was cool, that he took Kevin Huber with him as a Cincinnatian, and they did not take anyone from their social team. It wasn't like this was a planned stunt where, you know, we're going to do this and so we can get the video and post it. It was organic. He even said that his boyhood friends were in the car with his sons, and they said, "Do you want me to come in and video?" And he said, "No, we don't need to get this on video." And, you know, not realizing that everybody person in that bar has a video camera, and it would end. But I think that was genuine. I don't think that it was done for a viral moment. I think it was.
I absolutely agree with you, Jay. Yeah. It was very genuine, and it was something. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I saw a tweet out there, and I'm like, yes, that's it. That's when I thought, when I read this tweet, and he said, and the tweet was simply, "That's our effing coach." And I'm like, finally, you know, the fan base is getting behind a guy who's been embattled. Let's face it. I mean, everybody, I wrote a couple of weeks ago, everybody knew it like their Jim Lock combination, 625-1. That was Zach's record through two very difficult seasons, his first two in the NFL. Just to see what he's gone through this year, what the team's gone through, the way they've matured. It's been a fun thing to watch. And I think it continues Saturday in Tennessee.
You know, it's still, Zach's done a good job, but you still get that where there's still a segment of the.
When does it go away, Jay? Does it have? Do they have to get to the bowl?
I guess you got to win the Super Bowl, maybe back to back. Maybe this one they won. Because people keep saying that they're winning in spite of him, or he's doing a good job, but he needs to give up the play calling. You're never gonna please everybody, but it's very well deserved. I truly appreciate the way he treats the media, and, you know, anybody that works this job, you don't root for the team. You can't cover the team effectively by rooting, but you like to see good things happen to good people, and it's
Right.
clear that Zach is good people.
Well, and that's just it. You root for the story, and it's a good story.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no question. Anybody's paying attention to the Bengals this year knows it's a great story to follow
Right.
because there's so many new angles. There's so much newness. It's not riding the same. And granted, it's my first year on the Bengal beat, and I say that with full disclosure. But somebody like yourself who's seen a lot of crap, you're not riding the same old, what are they going to do in the draft, by, week 12 of the NFL season. You're actually writing about a team that believes in itself and believes it can run the table and go to the Super Bowl. And to me, I remember New England's first run with Brady to New Orleans. It had sort of this feel. It was a little bit different, but it had some of the elements, and there was a newness around New England. There was an energy that was totally unmatched. And to see that team go on the run and to see this team right now in the midst of the run, all I can say is enjoy it. You got anything else you're working on, Jay? You want to get out there?
No, I'm going to write the run game today, how they're going to attack Derrick Henry. And the one thing I wanted to mention was, maybe I'll give you a trivia question here, because I looked this up. I'm big on stats.
I'm always up for a good trivia question.
If Joe Burrow can win on Saturday, he would be the 20th quarterback since the merger in 1970 to win his first 2 playoff starts. You obviously saw one of those previous 19 in Tom Brady, and then Joe Montana did it, and Fran Tarkington, Boomer Esiason did it. But do you know who the most recent quarterback was to win his first 2 NFL playoff starts?
Ooh. Is he still alive in the playoffs?
He is.
Ryan Tannehill.
Yep. Saturday's opponent.
Yep. I kind of figured that. Yeah, I mean, I saw, and this was Brady's last playoff game in New England. Logan Ryan intercepted Tom Brady to seal the 2013 game, and that was Ryan Tannehill and Mike Vrabel beating Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget looking up from my monitor, my screen in the press box, and going, "What the F did I just see?" When Logan Ryan returned and I think that made it 20 to whatever it made it. 20. The final score was 20-13. And I think, that made it, a 10-point game at that point. And the Patriots got,
I remember that.
But I just looked up and I was like, oh my God, this is it, and that was Ryan Tannehill. So Tannehill is totally capable of managing a game on the road. And certainly if he's able to win a game like that in Foxborough, how tested and tough the Tennessee Titans are. Well, it's been fun, Jay, as always. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You got it, Jay. That's Jay Morrison of The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter and should be doing that already, but it's at Jay Morrison, ATH, all one word. He does a great job covering the Bengals and the National Football League. The Bengals and the Titans this Saturday afternoon, 4:30 Eastern time on CBS from Nissan Stadium. We'll be there. Until next week, this is Mike Petralia for Jay Morrison and the Jungle Roar podcast.